Professor Ganeri. I mean, this is very illuminating. So I was kind of rereading the book today morning. So I just have a question in my mind. So I've just written it down. And so is an avatara, so you're talking about the concept of avatara, is an avatara best understood as an incarnation of the single self that you were mentioning? I mean, a single self as Vishnu, or it is a heteronymic transformation where the authentic self becomes another? I mean,
yeah,
this
good
is one of the
question.
question I have.
Yeah.
I also, yeah.
Yeah. So the term avatar is one that's
also, I'm kind of, yeah, please.
The term avatar is one that's entered the English language. It's one of those terms that's come across from Sanskrit to English, and it's entered the English language particularly in the gaming, in the scenario of the gaming community and playing virtual reality games. And the idea is that within the virtual reality, your avatar is the virtual body that you have executive control of, and from whose point of view you perceive the virtual environment. And that's how Chalmers uses it. So that's just a reincarnation in the literal sense of that word, meaning having a different body, being incarnated differently, namely occupying a different body. But that doesn't take us to the notion of a heteronym, because the Pessoan notion of a heteronym isn't just me, myself, happening to find myself in a different body. It's me, myself, living my life, experiencing the world, having thoughts and feelings and emotions as if another person, so having a completely different emotional, cognitive, affective, volitional landscape. So then the question is, what does the Sanskrit word avatara actually refer to? Now, Chalmers, in his book, he decides to indulge in a little bit of exegesis of Hindu scriptures, but he takes the Sanskrit concept of avatara to mean the gaming concept of avatar. And I think that's quite wrong. I mean, that would imply that when Vishnu comes down to the earth reincarnated as Matsya, then it's just Vishnu. It's Vishnu the god, just turning up in a half fish, half man body. But that's not what the concept of avatara means. It's Vishnu, and I do mention some of the texts in the book. I don't get them now, but it's Vishnu recreating himself as Matsya. It's being recreated as Matsya. So he's living the life of a half fish, half man, experiencing the world as Matsya, not just simply hanging out in Matsya's body. So what I argued was that the proper Sanskrit notion of avatara corresponds to heteronymic virtualization, whereas the gaming concept of an avatar is mere reincarnation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I also have another question, but I can ask you later on. I invite our audience to question Professor Ganeri if they have anything to ask. Please unmute yourself and ask Professor Ganeri. Yeah. So Professor Madhuchanda Sen, Professor Monima Chadda, they have raised their hands. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Quite a few questions. First of all, what do we gain by this pluralization philosophically? Okay, so that is, I mean, I keep asking myself this question as well. Okay, what is it that I gain if I think that there is a kind of plural uh, uh, voices that I hear within me? Philosophically, how is that going to benefit me? One. The second is that can we just uh, not avoid saying that there is no self by opting for another different alternative, by saying that from the very start we were plural. From the very start we were related. From the very start we were taking, as my student Nilambar says, we were taking different I positions. And it is in and through taking different I positions that we became the subject that we are. So we might have been just plural from the very beginning, and we do not have to really think of our heteronomy as something that we virtually are creating, but we are already plural.
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah.
problem in this alternative? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madhuchanda. So, as to the value of thinking of ourselves as plural, I was trying to find something, but I can't find it. Pessoa's argument was that every time that I virtualize myself, I experience the world in a new way. Therefore, my experience is enriched.
Right.
I can experience everything in every way if I sufficiently dexterous in virtualizing myself. So it's like the skill of empathy. If you consider the skill of empathy, meaning knowing
Yes.
how it feels from someone
Right.
else's point of view, and if you agree that empathy is something valuable for human
Right.
beings to have, then it's like a kind of empathy on steroids. It's like in virtualizing myself, I experience, it's still me. It's not like I'm mind reading somebody else, which is more like a second person point of view. It's still a first person take on the
Right.
world, but from a cognitive, affective, volitional standing quite different from the one I happen to be born with. And as well as enriching my own personal experience, I would go so far as to argue that also would help one to cultivate the skill of empathy as directed towards others. So it's a way of making oneself a better human being all round. The answer to the second question is that I don't think it's an alternative, because I think that is Pessoa's view, namely that we are all, at least latently or in potentia, plural subjects. It's just that most of the time, the way that we live, the way that society conditions us, we aren't aware of this. We're conditioned to think of ourselves as unitary selves, and we're unaware of the possibility of existing as plural subjects. It requires, to be sure, a very, very active imagination. And insofar as we're not encouraged to use our imagination in this way, we don't explore this dimension of ourselves. But I think the claim is that this isn't a claim that happens to be true of Pessoa and a few like-minded rare individuals. This is true of the human subject. This is the nature of human subjectivity, to be in potentia inherently plural. So it's not an alternative. That is the view.
Thank you.
Professor Chandra.
Yeah, thank you, Jonardon. That was really good. First I wanted to respond to your query about finding it elsewhere in the Indian tradition. Now, I was thinking of the Jatakas.
Yeah.
The Jatak stories, and they end with this, and thus was I. Evam, Suttam. And that I was thinking is a way of at least thinking in those many lives, not both senses of heteronomy, but in the one sense where it's not parallel, that you can think of yourself, as the Bodhisattva, as a Buddha in another life, or, just as an ordinary being, and then, and thus was I when you're remembering the story. So this was just a thought I wanted to put forward and see how you respond.
I don't know the Jataka stories well enough, but it sounds absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's exactly the kind of thing I was hoping. I mean, given that they're Buddhist stories, it's kind of a place it didn't occur to me to look. I mean, how is that compatible with the Buddhist?
Well, I mean, that's my kind of second question. It's been something I'm thinking about, and thus was I. So what does the I mean here? In the sense that you're interested in, it's the sense of a subject, right? It is, in what sense is the same subject? It's different, kind of, if you think, different conscious bundles at different times. And if one thinks of one's own life and, different bundles of consciousness, I keep changing in that sense. But, you find it very reasonable that in one life it is the same person, but across different lives we find it rather unreasonable that it could be the same person. Or, in the heteronomy example, in the Rudra, thinking of Rudra and going through various forms. I mean, Bodhisattva can be in animal form, right? That's totally okay. So, yeah, I was thinking, in what sense, this kind of coming back to the point you were making, in what sense is that I the subject and the agent? Both things are relevant, especially if we are thinking of rebirth and, karma in the background. And kind of speaks to Madhuchanda's question as well, why should we care? So anyway, this was just getting your responses about, what more is required for being the same subject, or is nothing more required? Why not go the no self way? Sorry.
So when you say what more is required for being a subject, what more than being a kind of human bundle?
Yeah.
Well, what more is required for being a subject is having a first-person point of view, having a first-person point of view on the world and on one's experience of that world. And a mere bundle of psychological events doesn't add up to having a first-person perspective. So I would say that it's necessary to be a subject that one has a position, one is viewing the world, one is viewing one's environment from a position. Now that position needn't be coincident with the point of view of one's own actual body. Valberg in his very brilliant book, Death, Dreaming and the Self, he gives an example of how those two things can come apart. He says it's perfectly coherent to fall asleep and have a dream. And in that dream, I'm sitting at a table And opposite me at the table is Jerry Valberg. There he is in my dream. I'm looking at him. So in the dream, the point of view of the dream is not that of Jerry Valberg, but in the dream, the one of those two people, which one in the dream is me? The answer is it's the one who is occupying the point of view. So in the dream, it's the one who is looking across the table at Jerry Valberg. So one can occupy a first-person point of view different from the one one has in actuality. In a virtual simulation, in a dream, in a simulation, or in Pessoa's case, in a poem. And it's the question of poetry which I think answers the issue of agency, because you have to remember that Fernando Pessoa was the three greatest poets of the Portuguese language. He wrote poetry in three distinct heteronomic voices, quite different from each other, but each coherent within its own self, within its own corpus of poems. So the poetry of Alberto Cairo is quite different from that of Álvaro de Campos. So in answer to the questions, do the heteronyms have agency? The answer is yes, because they write poetry, and that's a form of agency.